Let's start off with a big round of applause for our wonderful hosts here at Mission Barbecue. And if you all have not ever been in here for lunch, for example, at noon every day, it comes dead quiet. Everybody stands at attention. They do the national anthem. And if you look around on the walls, you can see very veteran-focused, very friendly. And oh, by the way, they cater, right? Am I saying that right, Nicole? They cater any events and all that, so that's the shameless plug on behalf of our wonderful hosts here today. But welcome. Anybody know what that picture's from?
Opening day.
Opening day, that's right. That was the A-10s from Selfridge doing the flyby during the Tigers home opener. So, kind of blend in. Camouflage works, doesn't it? But if we could, Janina, no notice, you want to? Get your tail up here.
Thank you, Odie. Please stand, and as always, I invite everybody to join in the singing of our national anthem. I'll start it out nice and low for you. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Thank you. And once again, a great shout out to the wonderful team here at Mission Barbecue. All right, I'm not even going to try today. Everybody who's on my team here with the Air and Space Forces Association, raise your hands. All right, so everybody can see everybody on our team. Make everything happen. They, our ambassadors, fantastic. But our executive committee, they really do make a lot happen for this association. And I'm sorry, for those that are new, I am Doug Slocum. I am the president of the Michigan Air and Space Forces Association. So welcome. Thank you. Mama, John is here, the ambassador as always for the Michigan Aerospace Manufacturers Association, AKA Mama. You can do that, that's okay. And on behalf, because they're involved with this, also with NDIA and others, we do have MDEX coming up later this month, which is the Michigan Defense Expo. If you haven't ever been there before, lots of vendors and all held on the south campus of Macomb Community College. Attendance is free, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, but lots of other events, lots of speakers and everything else. A little Army-centric, we're working on that with them a little bit to get that aerospace and defense injected back in here in Michigan, but that's one of our charters. If you don't know, by the way, the Air and Space Forces Association, we're part of what we call the Michigan Defense Coalition. So we actually work very closely with NDIA, the National Defense Industrial Association, Women in Defense, WID, and AUSA, our Army equivalent on the advocacy side. And now join in our organization, this little cluster that we have, and that is just one word, no hyphens. Some of you got that. Is going to be the National Guard Association of Michigan. So NOGM is actually going to become part of that Michigan Defense Coalition also. So one team, one fight for the good of Michigan. All right, speaking of that, we've got Ron, our ambassador for DC3S, as always here. Ron, thank you for your great support. And of course, we have Janina, who came up and saying she's with the Navy. We are so joint, we even have her up there being our ambassador. Isn't that cool? All right, elected officials in the room. Once again, I'm not elected officials or staff of elected officials. Let's do it this way. I'm going to make sure you get called on, Alex. So hands up for everybody. Thank you, Lisa. Okay, so we've got folks from both of our Congress people from the 2 districts around here. Who else we got? Larry! You're up close. My focal length is longer than that now that I'm old. All right, but our wonderful county treasurer, great. Who else am I missing? Oh, there we go, County Commissioner Don. Great to have you with us as always. So, fantastic. We already talked about our team. And real quick, first-time visitors here. Hands up just so we can say thank you, welcome. Speaking of our first-time visitors, I said I'd give them 1 minute, so 60 seconds. Our recruiters, come on up here and talk. This is our active duty recruiters. If you don't know, the Air Force Association is working with the Air Force to help address the recruiting issues around the country and all. So it's great to have our local recruiters here with us, and here you go. The stage is yours.
All right, I got less than 1 minute. I'm trying to do this in 45 seconds. So, as you guys might have seen in the news, we're having a bit of a recruiting crisis, especially here in Michigan. When we talked about all the bases that have closed in the past, the Air Force is a family business. And the youth here just don't have a connection to the Air Force. They don't know what we do. And it's harder to inspire them to serve. So we're reaching out to AFA, we're asking for your help. As far as networking, giving our recruiter access to businesses, schools. We have recruiting offices all across Michigan, but they're having a hard time getting in front and inspiring the youth. So I'm going to leave my number in the back, but yeah, we're asking for your help as influencers in the community to try and help get our recruiters access to the youth and forwarding to events and interested applicants. But we're located right down here on Hall Road. We're open to having meetings with anybody, and I would appreciate anything that you guys could do to help their recruiting mission. Thank you.
How do you do on time? Very good. Thank you so much. And Max, you can throw your hand up back there too. Max has recently kind of joined us and all as part of the, I think, we're not really formalized with stuff yet, part of our executive committee, but has a passion for the recruiting side of things. So I think Max is going to be our ambassador on that, working with the recruiters. That's why they're all sitting back together. So a big round of applause for, people just championing the right stuff. All right, and of course, our wonderful sponsors. Sponsors make the world go round. This is how we can support. This is how we can do the things that we've been able to do. Some of the resources, and we want to try and, of course, maintain costs of holding events like this. And I'll talk about some of our upcoming events here shortly. But Diana, I know you're here in the room, our newest of the sponsors on the board. Thank you, Diana. Nobody from Sawyer. Anybody, Rick, at all from Velocity or Paula? Have not seen them this morning. I keep forgetting you're a sponsor when you wear 2 hats. Brian here, wonderfully, of course, is on our executive committee and, of course, running our IT and media stuff up here. But also he's with the Aero Retirement Options, so a sponsor and also wonderful. And in the Civil Air Patrol with me, so wonderful. Belfort, Ray Mahonen, Belfort Properties. AEW, who do we have? There we go. We've got, I saw Wayne in here too. Oh, you're just being subdued today. Wayne and Steve, thank you, as always, from AEW. Who else am I missing? We got everybody of our sponsors. Once again, a big thank you for what you do and how you help empower us in this mission. So, what is our mission? What a great segue. Education, advocacy, and support. This is what we do. The institution that was founded by the very same people who started our U.S. Air Force. Matter of fact, the Air Force Association predates our Air Force by 18 months. They had a vision. This was going to happen in 1947. Well, early in 1946, AFA started. In fact, there was an AFA magazine before we ever had an Air Force. Funny how that works. But our job, really, education, advocacy, and support. And that's exactly what we're doing today. We're going to be educating you a little bit from our speakers that we have talking. More on that in just a second. But to premiere, we have our new YouTube channel. You can see we're recording things. When we do our virtual meetings, we're recording those, and they're all going to get posted up on our YouTube channel. So no longer do you have to say, darn it, I missed it. You can actually go back and see some of the presentations and all that we've done. So you'll have that opportunity. The YouTube channel literally is like 2 weeks old, but we're going to update. And the F-15EX program brief from Boeing, for example, is on there. and then some of our past meetings, and we will have more posted up as we go. All right, so what's ahead on the schedule? Next week, if you are a member of the AFA, you're going to get an email from me with a link for the Zoom. They are free to attend. Anybody can. Doolittle Raiders Toast. All right, if you don't know, that's the anniversary of the Doolittle Raid. If you don't know what the Doolittle Raid is and how important that is to this country and to air power as a whole, tune in Thursday and you'll find out. All right, we'll talk about it, but we're going to do a toast because that's what the survivors of that did up until the last of them passed away. So we're going to continue that tradition. Down in Ann Arbor, 2 weeks from today, we're going to talk, Dr. Mark Elgin's going to there from the U of M Medical Center who works with the VA, talking about suicide prevention. So sometimes we dive into the tough subjects, and that's exactly what we're going to do down in Ann Arbor. Then we're going to do a repeat in our next meeting here is actually going to be on the F-117, the Stealth. We have a squadron commander of the first Gulf War who flew what I call them stink bugs, the F-117 Nighthawk. Our first stealth aircraft of the U.S. Air Force. He's going to come in and talk about the plane, the program, and his experiences. We get to talk flying and more stories. All right, just added to the schedule there in yellow. Our virtual for next month now is going to be Boeing, again, different division of Boeing. We're going to talk about the KC-46, the planes that are coming to Selfridge. So what is it about this new tanker aircraft? And you're going to get to hear all about it from the people who built it, designed it, and helped operate it. And then 110th Wing is coming back. They're going to go down to Ann Arbor this time and talk about their mission set, what they do between the cyber, the command and control, and the RPA mission. They're going to do that down in Ann Arbor on May 24th. So even think, oh, there's the Doolittle Raider toast, by the way, and you'll see when I talk and I give the presentation, Jimmy Doolittle, he's the short one and all that, but certainly a tall figure in aerospace history. Coming up also at the end of May, we're going to have a parade. We're going to get that same truck back again. I've locked that down this week. We're going to put posters on the side, and my favorite thing, those are dog bones. I go around handing it out to the pooches in the crowd. To heck with kids. Where are the fur babies? But we can throw out candy, dog bones, whatever. The St. Clair Shores Parade, if you've never been a part of that, it is huge. And why is it important to the Air Force, especially this time? Has anybody seen who the Grand Marshal is? Who's that? Miss America. Miss America. All right. Air Force Second Lieutenant Madison Marsh. How the heck they got her to be I have no idea, but boy, that was a coup. So maybe we'll get a picture with Madison as part of all that. All right, even further ahead, we're strategic planning. For those who want to know, in June, we're going to meet out at Starbase. And if you've never been to Starbase, you ought to come out. STEM education for 5th grade kids is what it's aimed for. They do some other things besides that, but from robotics to 3D printing to a space shuttle simulator, the whole idea is to get kids excited and going on STEM. The first one ever started here in Michigan at Selfridge, and now there's over 50 of them around the country. So this is Starbase 1, and we're going to go have a picnic out there and get to see everything they do with the kids and the wonderful programs that started here in Michigan. Further ahead, August, our big picnic that we always do out at the Enlisted Heritage House. That's always a favorite, all right, so plan ahead. There it is. The picnic is going to be out at the Enlisted Heritage House. And then our famous, ever famous, airplanes, tanks, and tacos out at the Air Museum, where we'll get the Sherman tank, we'll get all the displays, all the airplanes, and we'll set up our traditional taco bar out there for airplanes, tanks, and tacos. But those are the dates for your calendars. All right, April 12th in aerospace history. What happened on April 12th? Let's find out. Okay, to begin with, we're going to go really back in time a little bit, and I'd be stretching it to even say that it's aerospace other than the cannonballs flew, all right? But actually, the start of the bombardment of Fort Sumter actually started on April 12th, okay, 1861. So that's starting us off. What else happened on April 12th? The very first jet engine actually operated on April 12th of 1937. A Brit at Cambridge actually had a bench test. This was not the first jet to fly, but it was the first jet engine to run. Because a couple weeks later, a couple months later, a German actually operated one, and they had it flying before the Brits did. All right, but the first operational jet engine on April 12th. What else happened on April 12th? Let's keep going. All right, that's kind of a big one. When FDR passed away, handed the baton to Truman. just from a history standpoint. What this has to do with aerospace? Absolutely nothing other than and his comments. All right, so apparently it has something to do with space, but Bill Haley in the comments recorded Rock Around the Clock. And if you don't know what TV show that is from, you are way too young to be in here. Get out there. Okay. Yuri Gagarin, first person into space on April 12th. All right, and it was, 23 days later, the Americans put the first person into space. But the Russians beat us to get outside of our own atmosphere, so 1961. All right, also, the first B-52 attacks into North Vietnam, or outside of South Vietnam, depending on how you want to look at it, happened on this day, 1966, okay? So 1 year after the official start of the Vietnam War from our perspective. But it was the first time employing strategic air power against tactical targets outside, basically attacking North Vietnam. So kind of a seminal moment. Operation Eagle Pull. This was a couple weeks before we ended up evacuating out of Saigon. This was actually in Phnom Penh, in Cambodia, when they had the Khmer Rouge. We evacuated our staff and a lot of the nationals out of that capital, and it was a great rehearsal with some lessons learned of what we ended up doing a few weeks later in Saigon. All right, but once again, a huge military operation that happened on April 12th. Also on April 12th, the first space shuttle launch ever happened on April 12th. So this is kind of a cool day in history, isn't it? Certainly from a space standpoint, and it's interesting the fact that it only had a crew of 2. You'll see in later space, they had 6, 7, 8, whatever it happened to be. But for the initial launch, they just basically had the pilot and co-pilot. That's not the term they were calling, but. All right, enough on that. So now our guest speakers. We always want to bring enlightening information to you. You hear me talk a lot about what goes on at Selfridge matters to the rest of the state. Well, let's hear why the rest of the state matters to Selfridge and as well as Southeast Michigan. We have with us today a wonderful team from up at Alpena, the CRTC. I'm going to let them explain all these acronyms and everything to you. But we have Colonel Jim Rossi and Lieutenant Colonel Brian Wierzakowski, or as we used to simply call him, W10, because nobody could pronounce that last name. But it's great to have you all here today. If you want to come up and start pulling the laptop and everything else, we can do that. But while he's getting that set up, ladies and gentlemen, Colonel Jim Rossi.
Okay. Hey, good morning, everyone. Colonel Jim Rossi, Alpena CRTC Commander. Been up in Alpena. I've been the commander at Alpena for 3.5 years. Went up there in 2020 and spent the majority of my career down at Selfridge. So I'm no stranger to Selfridge. Really good to see some friends here in the room. Worked with a lot of you. That's better. Worked with a lot of you in the past. So it's good to see you all. I'm here to talk about ViewSonic. Just kidding. That's my one joke. That's all. That's the only joke you're going to hear. Really excited to talk to you about what's going on up in Alpena. Alpena is one of the 3 Air National Guard bases in the state of Michigan, of course. Battle Creek, Alpena is the other one. There's a third one. What is it again? Third one? Oh yeah, Selfridge, right. Again, over 30 years at Selfridge, proud child of Selfridge, enlisted there in 1987, and really, I still consider it home, for sure. Alpena is not like the other 2 in a lot of ways, Battle Creek and Selfridge. Battle Creek and Selfridge are wings, the 127th wing, the 110th wing. Alpena is not an Alpena wing, it's a center, which means it's a different organizational structure. It also means we're smaller. Alpena has about 100 men and women that wear the uniform, whereas Battle Creek has about 1,000. Selfridge has about 1,500. So we're different. We're smaller, but we like to consider ourselves small and mighty. We are doing a lot with our 100 men and women that wear this uniform. And we've got about 100 civilian partners and teammates that contribute to that mission as well. Federal employees, mostly state employees, and contractors as well. That whole team up there, we're all dedicated to our mission. And our mission is, there's a lot of words on this slide, but our mission is to provide a training environment for guests to get after whatever their mission is, whatever their training is, whatever they need to do to get better. We in Alpena, we provide them the environment to do that. Now, what does that mean? The environment might exist on base, inside the fence, the 600 or so acres that we occupy up there. There's a lot of training going on inside the fence. However, that environment that they're doing training in could be the airspace, above our heads when we're in Alpena. There's about 17,000 miles of military operating airspace that military aircraft can get into and accomplish the training that they need. Air-to-air training, air-to-ground training, and whatever else they need. That training might occur 50 miles west of Alpena in a town called Grayling, where we occupy, manage, schedule an air-to-ground range. So aircraft that drop weapons, that shoot guns, we manage the airspace and the actual range on the ground so that they can get better at doing that. We got about a dozen people stationed over in Grayling that work for us in Alpena. Those guys are really good at what they do. They're kind of on an island all by themselves, so they tend to wear a lot of hats in Grayling. But their mission is to support those aircraft that are flying overhead and to ensure that they've got the right tactics, to ensure that their weapons are scored properly. In other words, they drop a bomb and our guys on the ground are telling them how close they got to the target and keeping things safe there. That training that we offer might happen east of Alpena in Lake Huron. There's an area over Lake Huron called Restricted Area 4207. That area is 20 nautical miles east and west by 50 nautical miles north and south. So 1,000 square nautical miles over Lake Huron, about 20 miles east of the city, where it's a maritime range. So aircraft that have a mission to drop weapons into a range and do it in a way that they can do it accurately can do that in Alpena. We don't drop live weapons in the lake. It's all inert weapons. What that means is when the munitions hit the lake, they don't go boom. It's just kind of cement, right? And we're working through all the environmental analysis of that to make sure we're doing it safe and in conjunction with the National Environmental Protection Act. So that's all positive. This training that happens might happen 30 miles north of Alpena in a town called Rogers City. Rogers City has a quarry up there. It's actually the largest limestone quarry in the world. And they've got a lot of space available to them. They're not mining the entire quarry. There's about 1,000 acres on that quarry that we have a public-private partnership with the Rogers City folks, and they let us use it. So we've got 1,000 acres available to us that's underneath that airspace I was talking about before. And we've got things like drop zones out there. This area is right on Lake Huron, so the northern edge of the quarry and the eastern edge of the quarry is bordered by Lake Huron. So imagine the possibilities of training when we're thinking about amphibious assaults or defending against amphibious assaults. Drop zones, assaults, all kinds of stuff out on that land, and that was pursued about 5 years ago because we weren't doing enough for the warfighter before we gained access to this land. We were hearing from our customers that they needed more. They needed the aircraft that are flying overhead need to be doing more integration with their Army and air partners on the ground, right? So this 1,000 acres over in the quarry give us a great opportunity to do that. So yeah, that's our mission. Let's go to the next slide. So let's try and go to the next slide. There it is. All right, so I'd like to focus on just a few different things here. Some of the exercises and training things that are going on up in Alpena this year, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about partnerships that are very important to us and to the Michigan National Guard. And we'll just briefly hit on infrastructure modernization. And then I'll get out of the way and let W10 talk as well. He's got a lot of cool pictures. A lot of the stuff I'm talking about, you'll see kind of the fruits of that in some of the pictures here. The first one you see under exercises and unit training is Northern Strike. We've got a slide on this at the end, so I'll just keep it brief here, but I'm just kind of curious, how many people have heard of Northern Strike? Oh, good, great, glad to hear that. If Alpena and the training that we offer was a stadium, then Northern Strike would be the Super Bowl, right? That's the big exercise that is sponsored by Michigan. It's a National Guard exercise. There's more Army participants in it, but it's a significant air exercise, right? And we host that in Alpena and in Grayling. And a lot of participants of that exercise, very often they'll fly from their home station, participate in the flying aspect of Northern Strike in the air, and then go back to their home station. That happens quite often. You'll see more about Northern Strike here in a bit. But that's certainly the big one. This year is 2024. The first Northern Strike happened in 2012. And it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And it keeps getting bigger because the demand for that type of exercise continues to grow. In 2012, there was a small group of JTACs, Joint Tactical Air Controllers, that needed more integration with their air counterparts. JTACs are the folks on the ground who are the liaison between the Army and the air. They travel around with the Army, and when the Army needs a strike, these guys speak the air language and can call in that strike to where it needs to go. That's a really critical link between the Army and the air. So it started off as that, just building on more training opportunities, and it grew into what it is today, which is quite significant. About 1,000 people will put on the ground in Alpena for that, and Grayling usually puts about 5,000 people on the ground there, not to mention the thousands, at least hundreds of people that are participating from their home station. So that's a real big deal for us, and we're poised to support that very well. Next one you see there is Air National Guard Medical Readiness University. This year will be the first year that we're hosting that initiative. What that is the Air National Guard every year brings together their medical professionals to one location so that they can exercise, train, get their certifications that they need. And this year they chose Alpena to do it. We're really excited about that because, first of all, this is the first year they're doing it. Secondly, we know that once they come to Alpena and get the experiences that they're going to get here, we know they're going to continue to come back, right? But one of the things that really drew them into Alpena was that quarry that I talked about before. They came up for a site visit last year, and instead of offering training in what could be a stereotypically sterile environment, classroom environments for their medics and medical providers, right? Imagine the training that they need, getting it done in a conference room, right? Yeah, we can offer them that. But what we can also offer them is they're actually treating patients out in a pretty rough environment in a quarry, 30 miles away. That's quite some distance away from a hospital. So not only do they have to figure out how to treat these people in an austere environment, but they also got to figure out a very important part of combat casualty care or combat patient care is they've got to figure out how to get them to a place where they can be better supported from a medical community. In other words, getting them to a hospital. So the Medical Readiness University folks are super excited about diving in with some real meaningful training that we're going to offer Air National Guard folks from around the country. We should see about 500 folks from the medical portion of Air National Guard units, again, from all over the country. You see another one there, Air Force Battle Lab Air Base Defense Exercise. There's a lot of words there. This is an Air Force exercise that's coming up to Alpena in June to do a couple things. Number one is agile combat employment. Now, A-10s landed on a road up in Alpena, right? You all are tracking that. I think the last time I was here, we talked a little bit about that. The reason they did that is because they were demonstrating and testing their ability to operate in areas that aren't like major airports and major support, that have major support things around it. So if we can figure out how to land at austere airports, if we can land in places where we don't have 1,000 people surround us for you, maybe you got 10 or 12, right? So we do that at small airports. We've demonstrated we can do that on roads. That's called agile combat employment. It's called being more, the principle is the Air Force needs to be more agile, less predictable in the face of a very competent potential enemy out there, a near-peer adversary. So we need to be less predictable to those near-peer adversaries. So landing on roads, landing on small airports that don't have a lot of support, it complicates the enemy's targeting calculus, right? Sweden does that really well. The Air Force, the U.S. Air Force, is learning to do that right now. One of the ways they're learning to do that, and one of the ways they test and experiment with different tactics to do that well, is through exercises like the Air Force Battle Lab Air Base Defense Exercise. So we're really proud that they chose Alpena as one of the locations that this exercise is going to happen. The primary location for this exercise is Langley Air Force Base, and there's like 7 or 8 different bases, and one of them is Alpena. They're going to bring 400 or 500 people to Alpena in June to really test the Air Force's capability to be more agile and less predictable. And then the last one you see under exercises is something called Silent Swarm. That's an exercise that's been done 3 times now in Alpena. This year will be the 4th. This is put on by the Navy, and they are trying to, again, develop more technology for the warfighter. This is what Silent Swarm is all about. So how that works is they'll bring about 30 different private companies. They down select from somewhere around 100 companies that are interested in being part of Silent Swarm. But these are companies that have a connection to the Department of Defense, that may be working on some technology that might be interesting to the Department of Defense, very often in the categories of unmanned aerial system, counter UAS, and very often it's water related as well, right? Think small boats on the surface of the water that are undetectable, that can get to places that larger ones can't. Very often there's things like that these Silent Swarm folks are working on, and they're doing it in Alpena. Historically they've done it in the city of Alpena with a small footprint on the base, but this year they're kind of switching that template around. The majority of that team is going to be on the base in Alpena, figuring out what their technology needs to look like, testing it in rigorous environments, and then trying again, learning from what they learn, fixing what they need to fix, and then trying again, very often the same day. We've gotten feedback from some of those companies involved that they've done 9 months of research and development in 3 days, because there's people there evaluating their technology, giving them feedback, they make changes, and the loop continues time after time after time, and they're really getting after it and getting this technology closer to the warfighter. We're really proud to be a part of that. All right, partnerships. Important partnership this year with the Air Force Test Center. That's an agency out of Wright-Patterson that is very often charged with figuring out some of the most challenging problems that the Air Force has. They have a lot of people, they have funding, they have equipment that they're very often testing and trying to improve upon. Alpena and the environment that we have to offer is a great environment for them. So we've got a very important partnership with them that is burgeoning. Joint Personnel Recovery Agency. Imagine, these are the folks in the Department of Defense that are responsible for picking up a warfighter if that warfighter happens to go down in enemy territory or in friendly territory. So this isn't just a big team that sits around waiting for that to happen. They are thinking about what is the best way to retrieve our men and women if they happen to be brought down in whatever environment they happen to be brought down in. So they're thinking about the next potential fight, the near-peer adversary fight. They're thinking about technology and what they can do to provide technology to the airmen that are flying those airplanes so that should they go down, they get picked up efficiently and quickly. And again, we in Alpena offer that environment for them to test their equipment and to challenge themselves so that should the worst happen, that they're ready to respond. I talked about the Rogers City Quarry under partnerships. I won't talk about Taiwan and Sweden because I got to give W10 something to talk about, and he's really the lead guy in the Michigan National Guard to talk about those things and he's a lot more knowledgeable about it than I am. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. Infrastructure modernization. We've got a runway in Alpena that's a shared use runway, meaning we share it with the county. It's a 9,000 foot runway. The orientation of it, the length of it, the width of it, it's the same as Selfridge's runway, right? But it had seen better days. It was at least 40 years old, and it was crap. When I got up there, there was a lot of work that needed to be done on that runway. We successfully achieved a partnership between the Air National Guard and the FAA to throw some money together so that they could replace that runway. The north 7,000 feet of that runway was completely replaced last year. The last 2,000 feet they just started cracking pavement earlier this week. So before Northern Strike this year, we're going to have a completely brand new runway for us and for the community, which is pretty incredible, given that 3 years ago nobody was talking about a new runway in Alpena. So the flash to bang on that, the speed at which we were successful in getting Air National Guard funding, $40 million, and FAA funding, $14 million, and that partnership to put it all together and actually get folks out there accomplishing that needed work on the runway was pretty incredible. Tower replacement, you see our tower there, it looks really nice from a distance, but it was built in 1962, and it has seen better days. So we're working on a design to replace that thing. Fifth generation hangar, we have broke ground on a brand new maintenance hangar. 23,000 square feet, $30 million hangar. They actually about a month ago started in earnest to actually construct this thing. They've got holes in the ground. They're about to do the footings. They're making good progress. By the end of next year, we should have a brand new hangar. What's important about that hangar is it's fifth generation capable. That means that aircraft like the F-35s, the F-22s, that have very specific maintenance needs and requirements, technological requirements, information requirements that have to come their way, this hangar will be able to support all of their needs. Aircraft like F-35s don't have a lot of opportunities to go TDY to locations that can fully support them. Alpena will soon be one of those locations that can fully support them. So that'll be a big deal for us. It's a multi-use hangar, which means it doesn't matter what aircraft in the Air Force industry you bring to Alpena, we'll be able to support that. Could be a C-17, could be a C-130, could be F-15EXs, could be F-35s. Whatever it is, we'll be able to support that with this new hangar. Airspace expansion, there's been a 7-8-year initiative to expand this 17,000 miles of airspace that I was talking about. This kind of a overview of it here. I think we've got another slide on that. So Brian, maybe I'll let you talk about that. But that was a big one, and we're really close to the end of what that looks like, and I think we got to success by adding some key airspace that we needed. All right, just a couple pictures of broken concrete. This is our runway work. And I think I'm going to hand it over to W10 unless there's any questions for me. Yes, sir.
Colonel, you made reference to the simulated bombing range up there. And even though those bombs are inert, that's a very popular area for recreational boating. What do you do to clear, if one of those bombs drops on your head, it's going to hurt?
Yes, indeed.
What do you do to clear recreational boats away when you're doing simulated bombing?
Yeah, great question. So first off, the restricted area that I talked about is 20 miles off the coast. So you tend not to see recreational boaters that far away. We do see commercial boats that roll through that. There's something called a notice to seamen? Notice to mariners, thank you. That is put out before we do something like that. So they're all supposed to review that before they, do their boating and wherever they're boating. But reality is not everyone does. So we have partnerships with the Coast Guard, with NOAA, who has a big presence in Alpena, and they clear that area before anybody's dropping anything in the water.
How often do you conduct those training missions?
Yeah, the vast majority is during Northern Strike.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the big one. A few times in addition to that, in the summers, it will often happen, but Northern Strikes is the big one. We're not doing it every day, that's for sure. Good question. Any other questions? All right, more information from a better speaker than me. Come on, Brian. You got it.
No way. No.
Thanks, everyone. And I'll there might be a little tag team in here if we.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I appreciate it. So good morning.
Good morning.
That's much better. I'm W10. It's a pleasure to meet you all. First time being here. This is a great venue. My first time being at an Air Force Association event as well. So
A little closer on the mic.
how's that? Great, thank you. So I'm the operations director at the CRTC, and I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking with you about what we've been working on since the last time Colonel Rossi had the pleasure of presenting to you folks. We spent a lot of time trying to innovate to improve this training range that and training space that Colonel Rossi's talked about. So I'm going to go over a little bit of that today. In addition to that, due to the unique nature of our mission, we don't have a true deployable mission like the 110th or the 127th Wing would have. Our mission is primarily being the caretakers of this and hosting our customers. Because of that, a lot of the state strategic initiatives and special projects make their way to the CRTC. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that as well. A few things on this slide. We have in the operations group the live mission operations capability, and what this is through a series of instrumented ranges, data link capabilities, and other programs that we are able to replicate, basically simulate a battle space for the aircraft as the pilots are training in the airspace. So we can construct a maritime training scenario. I want to use the word fake, simulated air tracks, simulated ground tracks that the crews have to interact with. And we can change the intensity of that on any given day based on what the users want or the skill levels of those folks. And then we can watch in real time how the pilots and crews are reacting to this simulated environment, and we can kind of turn up the volume, increase the intensity to the point where, not to the point of failure, but to the point where they're definitely in the learning mode. So we also facilitates rapid debrief when the crews get back in. So we're very proud of this capability. We continue to try to upgrade it all the time, and we do a lot of work with industry to try to improve upon that. What you're seeing here is our military operations in urban terrain or MOUT town. Through the great ideas of some of our airmen, just straight innovation, these guys have created the first tactical cyber range in the country. So what this is they've instrumented some of these buildings as if they were safe houses. They have artificial intelligence capabilities, license plate identification, facial recognition. They have sensors where they can detect the electromagnetic signature of a force trying to attack that building or capture that building. And we can control that environment, and we can give folks that are trying to engage and defeat those sensors real-time feedback. We even have opposition forces so that if they trigger one of these sensors or they're not successful in defeating this thing in a cyber realm, they're going to get instant feedback by being attacked by opposition forces. So this is we're really excited about this. Again, this is the first location in the country that has this type of training. It's been really beneficial for special operations forces, and there's been a lot of learning that's happening with this. An example of that is at one point there was an Air Force Special Operations Command aircraft with a lot of unique capabilities that was at the CRTC training, and when they heard about what we were doing, they said, hey, wait a minute, we have stuff, we can help with that. They were able to help the forces be successful in engaging the building, so we all learned something about capabilities and how the services can work together, so it's great. This is a joint threat emitter. We have 3 of them in the state here that we control from Alpena. We also control 3 in the state of New York. What this does is, and it's huge. It's hard to move around. It's about the size of a semi-truck trailer. And what this does is it sends a signal to the air combat aircraft who have sensors in there on board that can tell them, hey, there's a threat over there. You might want to do something about it, or it might get you. So we can simulate those threats, and so that the pilots can get great training. But this year, we were able to acquire 4 elite threat emitters. These are they're small. We can put them in the back of a pickup truck. We can put them on boats, which is something we like to do with our maritime domain, which I'll talk about. But we acquired 4 of these, and we were the first unit in the Air National Guard to get them. And these are very important to 5th generation F-35 in particular. They're able to see these, and their jet can see this as a threat in the training environment. So this has been, we're actually loaning these things out to other units right now for other exercises around the country. So we're really proud we were able to acquire these. All right, so Colonel Watson talked a little bit about the maritime domain. You know, it's very unique here in the Midwest to have basically, you all know how big Lake Huron is. It's basically an inland sea. And this provides a unique opportunity for maritime training for combat air forces. Most of our ranges on the coasts are saturated with aircraft wanting to use them. It's hard to get in there to get that training. We offer it right here in the Midwest. So it's great for our Midwest units. We're doing a lot to try to improve this. You know, we have the quarry Colonel Rossi talked about up in Rogers City. We have our littoral training areas, which is just everything on the coasts. We have water drop zones out here, deep water ports, shipping lanes, R4207 that Colonel Rossi talked about here, which is our air-to-surface range, and then the partnerships that we've been able to foster with the Coast Guard and NOAA that help us out with ships, which we'll talk about. So here's an example from Northern Strike last year. This is the Marine Corps. They're doing some ship seizure training, and this was a NOAA boat out of Alpena. So this is an example of, it's not just Air Force units that are getting training out here in Lake Huron. It's all the services and our international partners, which I'll talk about. Another example. So this is our first ship. Our first U.S. Air Force boat we acquired. It's a Boston whaler. It actually was sitting in the in storage for quite a few years, and we pulled it out this year, and we've kind of revitalized our maritime unit, for lack of a better term. So this, you'll be amazed at the amount of demand on this Boston whaler by all of our customers. We could use 10 of these things. And it's really interesting. You see the U.S. Air Force written on the side of it. We're pretty proud of it, and folks in town like to see us puttering out on this thing. But I'll talk a little bit more about boats here, and other boats, in just a second. Yeah, right now. So this is the Mark 6 patrol boat. It's an 85-foot jet boat. It was used by the United States Navy for port maritime security. It was built in 2017, about $15 million a pop. Crew of 11. You can see it's heavily armed. And high speed, has a very low draft, can operate in littoral areas. Well, the Navy decided that they were going to trick these things. They were going to turn them back into DLA because they were just too expensive to run based on the mission they were operating. They learned that instead of operating this thing 365 days a year, 24/7 with a crew of 11, they could do, for that mission, they could do it with a smaller boat with a smaller crew, saving money. So nothing wrong with the vessel itself, but they're going to turn it in. So we heard about that, and we said we'd like to have 3 of those, please. Please and thank you. Yeah, so we spent 4 months, almost every day, planning to have create a joint organization between the Michigan Army National Guard, Michigan Air National Guard. We were talking to the manufacturer. They're going to provide us training down at Little Creek, Virginia, which is a small naval base there on the coast. And we were going to drive these things with the help of some gentlemen in the back up through the Hudson River, up through the Erie Canal, into the Great Lakes, and then finally into Alpena, adding these to our Boston whaler fleet. And we are really excited about it. This is game-changing for us in the maritime domain and what we can offer our customers. These things look, smell, and taste like combat vessels. They have electromagnetic signatures that are similar to a combat vessel, which is important for counter-maritime air training. But I got a couple other pictures here to show you. It's a pretty impressive vessel. That's me down at the shipyard down in Norfolk, so you can kind of see the size of one of these things. But unfortunately, about 2 months ago, we learned that from the Secretary of Defense decided he put a hold on the transfer. He hasn't said completely no yet. He said, hold on, I think we might want to give those to some NATO countries. So we kind of put this plan on the shelf, and we're hoping, we've got some feelers out just to make sure that they know, hey, wait a minute, before you do that, did you know that we have a need for these, and our customers have a need for these, and we have a valid training need in the state of Michigan that the military needs. So we're waiting to hear back. When hopefully they're going to call us and say, yep, you guys can have your 3. Thanks for letting us know, and we'll be able to dust off the plans and we'll go get these boats and hopefully get them into Michigan. A lot of interest from partners. Michigan State Police was interested in these. Customs and Border Patrol. You can just imagine, these things. I can't remember exactly how fast they are, but they're fast, very fast. Oh yeah, you drive this thing with a joystick, and when you get in the flight, or I call it flight deck, whatever you call the area that you drive a boat from, it looks a lot more like a jet fighter cockpit than any boat I've ever seen. So it is really cool. So hopefully we'll see these in Michigan. You all know that we've been working on the highway landings. Well, we've been doing a lot of work with other organizations now around the country. It's starting to catch on a lot more. The Marines are doing it with F-35s on the West Coast. What you see here is the first MQ-9 landing on a highway in the United States. That was done in Wyoming about 5 months ago. So we're constantly in touch with other military organizations that want to learn what we figured out when landing highways in here in Michigan. So one of our state partners let's start talking about international stuff now. We do a lot of international engagements. One of our partners for peace in Michigan is Latvia. And recently they learned that they would be hosting the Baltic Air Policing Mission, it's basically NATO, all of the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. They are bordered by the Baltic Sea. Russia likes to fly their, I'm going to forget the names of the cities, but they basically are landlocked. They can't get down to one of their primary countries where they have a main base, so they have to fly around this area. And when they do, they don't just fly, they collect on our friends. They, oops, sorry, I entered your airspace. They do all that stuff. So there's an alert mission, 24/7, 365, run by NATO countries. They come in as guests. Right now it's Germany, which I'll talk about in a minute, but Latvia found out they were going to host this mission for the first time. So they asked us to come over there. We sent a team from the Michigan Air National Guard twice, in fact, to go over to Latvia and work with them to help them get ready to have these German Luftwaffe, if I said that right. Someone please correct me to 100%. Luftwaffe, thank you. Eurofighters. I've got a picture of them here in a minute. This was a bunker, an old Soviet-era bunker that the Russians left behind, that we're helping them convert to be a place where they can actually build up the live missiles that they're going to have that they have on these alert jets. And I'm happy to report that just about a month ago, for the first time, the very first day they stood up this mission, they successfully intercepted a Russian aircraft that was violating their airspace. So we do a lot of work with Latvia. We've been doing it for years. This is for those of you who haven't been to Alpena, this is the Historic River Club, and this is when we hosted a delegation from Latvia. You can see the Chief of Defense sitting there next to Colonel Rossi. This is Colonel Saltups from Latvia. He runs the Military Aviation Authority. This is him presenting a plaque to Colonel Rossi. We also have an informal partnership with Taiwan. This past Northern Strike, we had Taiwan F-16s training with us in the National All-Domain Warfighting Center in the Alpena complex. We also have very strong partners on the Army side with the Michigan Army National Guard. They will be back again for this Northern Strike, and they will be a brigade-level size Army presence in Michigan from Taiwan. This is, I still cannot, he's an F-16 pilot from Taiwan, call sign is Mountain. I cannot successfully pronounce his name, so I'm not going to try. Great people, though. One thing that's really interesting to me with these international engagements is how one, it's fascinating to learn about the cultures and learn about their particular military cultures, and it's a challenge, to say the least, to try to, as we work together and we build these friendships, how can we help each other's military be more successful with the challenges that we face. This is a delegation from the Army in Taiwan. Interesting side note, that A-10 you see behind them, about a year and a half ago, during a Northern Strike, a gentleman was doing a high-angle strafe in the A-10 at the Grayling Range, and his gun malfunctioned, and it literally blew up. Damaged the front of the airplane to the point where they decided they're not going to repair it. So they're going to give it to us, and we're going to make it a static display on a stick at Alpena. So that's now our A-10. We're happy. What's that, sir?
That's the one that we skidded to a stop? 6, 7 years ago, or is this a different one?
This is a different one, sir. Yeah. You notice, that if you, I don't know if you can see, the gun's not in there because the gun was destroyed. So, but yeah, it's ours now. Hopefully you'll see it on M32 when driving driving into Alpena soon. So because we had a, how am I doing on time? Good. Okay? Okay. Because we had a, we had this experience landing aircraft on highways, about a year ago, Sweden announced their intention to join NATO. And so they set up staff talks with Headquarters Air Force and the Swedish senior leaders in Sweden. And the Michigan Air National Guard was invited to join that delegation because of our shared experience with landing on highways. And I don't know if any of you are familiar, but Sweden does this better than anybody. They've been doing it for many, many years. You know, Sweden was basically, before joining NATO, which just happened a couple weeks ago, they were planned to be, they were neutral, weren't planning on having anybody come to help them if they got in trouble, and so they've gotten really good at being a very agile Air Force. And while I was one of them that had the pleasure of going there, and while I was there, I observed this is just a roadway. These jets, this is a Gripen aircraft I'll talk about in a minute, but this is just a roadway in the woods. You know, they take off, they need 3,000 feet to take off, they go to straight pieces of highway like this. Yeah, a very impressive aircraft. They can turn this aircraft in under 10 minutes for air-to-air mission. That's fully fueled, reloaded all weapons. There's nobody out there that can do that. And they designed this aircraft. This is one of the things that Sweden talks to us about, is they designed their aircraft with their mission in mind. You know, they don't design the aircraft and then see what it can do after that and try to adapt it to its capabilities. They made this so they could operate in this way off their roads, which is absolutely fascinating. So, this year, this was the second staff talks. Headquarters Air Force called us and said, hey, you know, we're going to be hosting Sweden in the United States this year. Can you guys help us out? And we said, yeah, why don't you have any ideas? And he said, yeah, why don't you bring them up to Alpena? So they did. And just last week, we hosted the second U.S. Air Force Swedish staff talks at the Alpena CRTC. It was a delegation of about 18 people from Headquarters Air Force and senior leaders from the Swedish Air Force. Here you can see that's Colonel Jars Lederblom. He's a senior advisor. He was the co-chair of the delegation. Major General Matra from Headquarters Air Force was the other co-chair. This is them getting off the C-37. That's General Maman from the air side and General Wog on the Army. And so what did we do when we got in town? Of course, we put them on Black Hawk helicopters, Lakota helicopters. We flew them out to the range. We got the A-10 shooting the gun right over their head. Training demonstrations, you know, start things off right, good food. We brought them back. This whole time we spent time teaching them about the Michigan National Guard and the National All-Domain Warfighting Center. This is General Rogers, our tag for the Adjutant General for the state of Michigan, presenting him with some seats to an innovation training course. It was an awesome event. We fed them barbecue at the River Club. They loved it. These guys, they enjoy their adult beverages. They like to sing and toast and all that stuff. So it was really, really cool event, and really started our relationship off with Sweden the right way. They definitely left here. I don't know what the future will hold. My understanding is that we filled out an SPP application to be their SPP partner nation.
Tell them what SPP is.
Thank you. State Partnership Program. So NATO nations, especially the ones around the former Soviet Union, they partner with with National Guards across the country. And then that provides engagement. There's funding that comes with that. And that's how we had such a close relationship with Latvia, because they were our state partnership program nation. So hopefully that makes sense. So Colonel Lederblom said, one of the things he said after he was presented a gift, he said, this is the first time I've set my foot down in Michigan, but it's not going to be the last. So we're looking forward to welcoming these guys and their Gripen and their agile culture. We can learn a lot from these guys. This is an advanced Air Force. Here's another picture of the delegation in the DFAC at Alpena. Finally getting close to the end here, and we'll open up for questions. But Northern Strike 24-2, what's it going to be all about? More agile combat employment. And if you haven't heard of that, that's the new way we present forces in combat. As Colonel Rossi was talking about, against these peer adversaries, their capabilities are so powerful now, and their weapon systems are so accurate. We can't afford to operate from big bases like we used to. Like as an example would be Bagram in Afghanistan. Against an adversary that has a capable adversary, if you park all your planes in one place, it's like Pearl Harbor. They can destroy them all, or they can take out your runway and make your aircraft and capable of operating. So we need to be agile, and that's what they're going to do. They're going to hop around. It's being unpredictable, moving around from base to base, operating with diminished logistics trails because that allows you to move around faster. So they're going to be experimenting a lot with that. A lot of medical stuff that Colonel Rossi talked about is going to be integrated as well, medical innovation. There's going to be a large maritime scenario that's going to be, and Taiwan's going to participate in that. So another big northern strike, as Colonel Rossi says, it's just growing and getting bigger and better every day. So with that, thank you very much, and I'll open it up to any questions. Yes, sir.
When the Taiwanese and the Swedish come, do they bring their own planes?
Yeah, the Taiwans, well, they fly Air National Guard airplanes out of Tucson.
They're actually Taiwan-owned airplanes, which are in the 425th, which is operated by my old unit in Tucson. So with U.S. instructors, but Taiwan-owned airplanes flying in the United States. Complicated answer to a simple question.
Thank you.
In Tucson.
They have them stationed in Tucson. Yes.
Great question. Any other questions?
No other questions?
Well, thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, well, fantastic. One more round of applause, please. And just a couple things for our guest speakers. One, we like to give them the big damn bullet with the AFA engraved on the side. They've seen them before, but there's for your case. And just to torture them a little bit, personally from me, a signed copy of a book somebody wrote. So fantastic. So hopefully we learned a few things. Did you know that the Michigan Air National Guard has a Navy? I didn't know that. Now we do. You learned a little bit about Sweden. I heard that we're going to do an offsite up to the River Club for one of our meetings. Did you hear that too? Okay. All I have to do is arrange the Chinook helicopters to take us up there so we don't have to do that damn drive, all right? So I'll work on that one. If you have any questions afterwards, please. Our guests will be hanging out here for a little bit. They don't want to do their drive home, so there's a good excuse to hang out. But thank you all for being here. Remember, next month, second Friday, always the second Fridays for us, we're going to be talking about the F-117. You're going to hear about our first stealth airplane, and there's actually some really interesting information you'll find out. It's not probably what you think. But that being said, thank you for your support. It's easy to join the AFA, by the way. If you're not a member, get on our mailing list. Either give me your email address, or it's like $20 a month. I think they're having a special even right now. I'm sorry, a year. For memberships. If you have any questions, Ray's got brochures in the back. And there's an air show next month. No, June. First weekend in June. If anybody would like to advertise for that, please see Janina. They have a nice brochure they give out to all the hundreds of thousands of people who attend there. So if you'd like to get the word out about your business or whatever, see Miss Janina there in the back who's got her hand up and sang our wonderful national anthem. That being said, God bless you in the United States. Have a great rest of your week, and we will see you in the near future. Take care.